I knew once Newsweek did that article about the four horsemen of apocalypse last week or a few days ago, that more would follow, and that's what's happened. There's an article in Newsmax that was written by retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt on Monday, June 6th. It's titled, Weak U.S. Will Bring On Four Horsemen of World War III. And I have a Bible study on the book of Revelations, and I'm thinking about doing on here. I think it would be pretty interesting to go through and do, and it would help me learn it as well. So if you want me to do that, let me know. So the article says, wars, rumors of wars, famine, and pestilence. Not that we should tempt fate, but it seems giant earthquakes are the only thing left to fulfill ancient prophecy. It is almost cliché today to say that these are indeed biblical times. We are taught that the four horsemen of the apocalypse would be our sign. Amidst a backdrop of unending crisis here and abroad where each shockwave is worse than the last, and still, Las Vegas odd makers wouldn't peg a chance of Armageddon at more than 2%. If one had to identify today's potential four horsemen, one could argue that Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea could be burnished into each saddle. Their loading of the system and resentment based on ill-defined grievances has brought them in league with each other, despite having disparate cultures. These horses are dragging us all into World War III. With today's killing technology, mankind's existence could well be hanging in the balance. The riders are unified by a deep hatred of the current world order as led since World War II by the United States and the Bretton Woods construct. Recently, Secretary of State Antony Blinken reaffirmed the U.S. position to uphold and enforce what he called the rules-based order as he attempted to clarify the U.S. policy towards an increasingly aggressive China. In turn, China wasted no time attacking the secretary, who barely had time to mention human rights abuses and intrusions into Taiwan airspace. Putin wages war in Europe, Xi coerces nations globally, Khamenei races to get nukes while screaming death to Israel and America. Kim threatened South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. throwing North Korea's nuke program into high gear. All it will take now is a spark in this dry forest of kindling wood where strong leadership and defense of freedom seems thin at best. Any or all of these four horsemen could usher in the next, and possibly last, world war with the intent to do so, or from some horrible miscalculation in a highly charged, dangerous world. How did we get here? The answer is simple: weakness. And he goes on further in this article, and I will link it in the description box below. Now, I found another article on the website of Life, Hope, and Truth called Insights into News and Prophecy, Are the Four Horsemen of Revelation Writing Today? And it's by Isaac Khalil, and it was printed on April 4th of 2022. The article states, recent events in our world have stirred many people's interest in Bible prophecy. Where do current events fit in the end-time prophecies of the Bible? We live in a world filled with turmoil and uncertainty, and boy, that's the truth. Many people sense that our world is in the midst of significant upheavals. One of the most famous prophecies in the Bible is the ominous ride of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. As we've explained many times on this site, the four horsemen ride the white horse, which is religious deception, the red horse, which is wars and rumors of wars, the black horse, which is famines, and the pale horse, which is pestilence and death. If you are not familiar with these four horsemen, read What Are the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse? And he has a link to that article on this site. And I will be putting a full link to this article in the description box. It goes on to say, though the trends these horsemen represent have been on the world stage for a long time, they will escalate in intensity and impact during the end times. But as terrible as they are, Jesus called them only the beginning of sorrows, which is in Matthew 24:8. The last 3 years have seen some horrible events: a global pandemic, social unrest, and now a major war in Europe. Are the rides of the four horsemen beginning to escalate? Let's examine the horsemen in light of recent events in our world. The Red Horse of War. The rider of the red horse is described as one who has a great sword to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another. Revelation 6:4. Jesus described it this way: and you will hear of wars and rumors of wars, and nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And that's in Matthew 24:6-7. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has sent shockwaves around the world, with many eyes now focused on events in Europe. Many fear an escalation of events could drag the world into a third world war. For more insight on that, read Will There Be a World War III? And he has a link to that article as well. This war has further divided and unified nations. China and India have refused to rebuke Russian aggression, which has drawn an ire from other nations. In Europe, nations have come closer together in response to the Russian threat. Could this be the crisis that will inspire Europe to unite in the spirit of one of the founding fathers of the EU, John Monnet? He said, Europe will be forged into crisis and will be the sum of the solutions adopted for those crises. This current crisis has overthrown the stigma of Germany's rearmament, with Germany now committing 100 billion euros to rearm. It will now spend 2% of its GDP on the military. Germany will use those funds to buy American F-35s, which are capable of carrying nuclear weapons. To learn more of the significance of this development, read Germany Begins Rearmament, a Turning Point in History. And there's also a link to that article. Russia's Vladimir Putin blames his invasion of Ukraine on the United States and Europe, claiming they are working to persuade Ukraine to leave Russia's sphere of influence and join Russia's enemy, the West. However, this was likely just an excuse, as Mr. Putin's real goal seems to be restoring the territories of the former Russian Empire and former Soviet Union. Mr. Putin has continually warned the United States and European nations to stay out of the conflict, even threatening the use of its nuclear arsenal. When Ukrainian President Zelensky recently implored the United States and NATO to impose a no-fly zone, Putin warned that the very second they moved to do so, Russia would view them as participants of the military conflict, and it would not matter what members they are. Putin's pretty scary. This dude, he used to be okay, but it's like he has just flipped his lid these past couple of years. Putin has ordered his nuclear weapons on high alert. He is good at bluffing, but he also has proven to be a leader willing to follow through on his threats. In Ukraine, President Zelensky has called for all able-bodied men to take up arms and fight. On the other side of the world, China's incursions into Taiwan's territory continue to be a concern. In the early hours of the Russian invasion, China sent 9 aircraft into Taiwanese territory. China may feel emboldened to invade Taiwan as a result of Russia's recent action. No doubt, China is closely watching how the West responds to Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. In the Middle East, Israel continues to have concerns about U.S. efforts to revive the Iran nuclear deal. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett warned that a nuclear Iran will likely create a more violent, more volatile Middle East, and that Israel won't accept Iran as a nuclear threshold state. In addition, Iran has been practicing war games with Russia and China. Yeah, Iran having nukes, that is a scary thought. In other areas, a full-scale war was recently averted between India and Pakistan after India accidentally fired a missile into Pakistan's territory. Fortunately, no one was injured or killed, otherwise the accident could have escalated into a wider conflict. The Bible shows that the end-time world will be dominated by 3 major regional powers: the King of the North, a revived Roman Empire centered in Europe; the King of the South, likely a confederation of Muslim nations that will attack the King of the North and then be counterattacked and defeated; and the kings of the East, likely led by Russia and China, who will attack the King of the North. Do you notice that a power block is missing? The English-speaking nations led by the United States and the United Kingdom are missing in the end-time geopolitical landscape. The US and UK in particular have maintained the global order for over 200 years. But Bible prophecy shows that these 2 nations will be rendered powerless before the end times, largely as a punishment for their national sins. To learn more, read What Will Happen to America, and he puts a link to that article in there as well. We may be seeing the collapse of the US-led geopolitical order that has maintained global stability since the end of World War II. The United States is not viewed as an invincible superpower, but as a power that is weakening. We are currently witnessing a recalibration of the global order, with other powers seeking to fill the void. The impact of warfare goes beyond just the loss of human life. Wars also have major effect on food supplies. Russia and Ukraine account for a third of the world's wheat and barley exports, and Russia is the leading supplier of fertilizers, on which much industrial food production depends. Disruptions in food supplies can also lead to war. Consider the Arab Spring. In Egypt, the rise of the price of wheat led to uprisings that toppled Hosni Mubarak's government. The rising food prices have a real risk of causing major unrest in North Africa and the Middle East. This naturally leads us to the next horseman, the Black Horseman of famine. In Matthew 24:7, Jesus warned of famines. This is described in Revelation as a black horse with its rider holding a pair of scales, depicting major shortages, and that's Revelation 6:5-6. There is probably not a person reading this who hasn't noticed price increases on almost everything we buy. And this article is written back in April, and here it is June, and price of food and gas and just about everything is still going up worse than it was back when this article was written. Inflation is pushing the price of goods up, and in a circular and interdependent economy, a rise in the price of one product has ripple effects on the prices of other products and will ultimately be felt by the consumer. Russia and Ukraine play a big part in global food security. Consider the following status. Russia and Ukraine supply about a quarter of the world's wheat. Ukraine is a major exporter of corn, barley, and rapeseed oil. Ukraine produces almost 50% of the world's sunflower oil. Nearly 26 countries rely on Russia and Ukraine for over 50% of their grain and oil supply. Russia and Belarus are the second and third largest producers of potash, which is used as the main ingredient in potassium-rich fertilizers. Russia is the world's largest exporter of nitrogen-based fertilizers and phosphates. Currently, one of the major drivers of inflation is the rising price of oil. Nearly all transport systems are dependent on oil. So this single commodity affects the price of almost everything, and that is very true. But that alone does not explain all the causes of today's inflation. Many of the Western nations are enacted by massive spending programs to deal with the economic fallout of the pandemic and lockdowns of the last 2 years. The enormous spending caused inflationary pressures, driving up the cost of goods. The U.S. national debt has risen around $10 trillion in the last 4 years and doubled in the last 10 years to an astronomical $30 trillion. In addition, several shortages from microchips to lumber have added to the inflationary pressures. All of this was before the Russian-Ukraine war. As a result of the war, the United Nations projects a 20% increase in food prices. I think it's more than that. Again, this article was written in April, and the food is, there's some stuff that I buy that has already risen like $5 more than what I used to pay for it. Russian fertilizer and coal billionaire Andrei Melnyko, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, recently warned that the war has already led to soaring prices in fertilizers, which are no longer affordable to farmers. Farmers are facing rising prices for fuel, animal feed, and fertilizers. These costs will be passed on to the consumers. On top of that, many farmers around the world are facing unfavorable and unpredictable weather conditions. An article in the April 4, 2022 issue of the Christian Science Monitor posed the question, one big question mark hovering over global food market concerns, how long the Ukraine war lasts and how damaged the country's agriculture, export, infrastructure, grain silos, fertilizer plants, port facilities ends up once fighting ceases. And I think they've pretty much torn up a good part of those. Inflation and food scarcity can also lead to political and social instability within nations. The prophecy of the Black Horse specifically mentions huge price increases for wheat and barley. Revelation 6:6. Expect to pay more for a loaf of bread and other food necessities. And we've been seeing that for a couple of months now, and it just seems to go up more and more. The prophecy, it says, but the worst famine of all is described by the prophet Amos. He prophesied of a coming famine of hearing the words of the Lord. And that's in Amos 8:11. Though they now have access to the Bible, more and more people will refuse to hear, read, or respond to it. We are seeing this famine getting worse and worse in our Western societies as people are increasingly ignorant and hostile towards the Bible. Studies show that even people who attend church regularly don't read the Bible. For more insight to this problem, read Judeo-Christian Values Under Attack, What Can You Do About It? And there's a link to that article. The Pale Horse of Death. The pale horse and its rider named Death will take the lives of a quarter of the Earth's population. This occurs as a result of war and hunger, as well as pestilence and natural disasters. And that's in Revelation 6:8 and in Matthew 24:7. The world has recently witnessed major disease outbreaks, notably the virus pandemic. I can't say the word on YouTube. But other diseases such as MERS, SARS, bird flu, swine flu, and Ebola continue to spread and take lives. And now we have this monkeypox coming up on the scene, and I don't even know where that one came from. That's a weird one. These are all classified as zoonotic viruses, which means they were transmitted from humans from animals. Interestingly, the book of Revelation says that the rider of the pale horse will kill not only by sword and hunger, but by the beast of the earth. Revelation 6:8. While this may refer to animal attacks, it could also refer to deaths from diseases that originate in animals. The pandemic will pale in comparison to the pandemics that will come when the pale horse ride intensifies. For more insight, read Is the Virus an End-Age Plague and why the Surge in Infectious Diseases. And he has links to those articles as well. The White Horse of Deception. Wars, famines, and pandemics are easy to see and document throughout history, but many miss the significance of the first horseman, the rider of the white horse. The white horse often gallops invisibly, with the effects of its rider not always as obvious. What is the white horse? The white horse and its rider represents false religion. In the Bible, the color white often represents righteousness. That's in Isaiah 1:18 and Revelation 3:5. Jesus is pictured as returning on a white horse with a powerful sword, Revelation 19:11 through 15. But the rider of this white horse carries a bow, a weapon that uses arrows which are associated with Satan, Ephesians 6:16. The white horse represents a counterfeit Christ, a figure who masquerades as Christian, but is actually from Satan. The counterfeit Christianity is described in Revelation as one who looks like a lamb, another symbol of Christ, but speaks like a dragon, Revelation 13:11. And we have been seeing that one for a while with all these fake preachers and cult leaders and people just spewing nonsense regarding the Bible. That's been around for a while, but it says there's going to be a uptick in that. History shows that before the collapse of the Roman Empire, a new religious power rose to prominence from within the empire, the Roman Catholic Church. Out of this religious body came many protesting daughter denominations. To learn more, read The End Time Ride of the White Horse of Revelation, and there's a link to that article as well. The current pope has been active presenting himself as a humble servant of the poor, but he represents a church that teaches and practices many things in direct contradiction to the Bible. In addition to the historical false doctrines taught by the Catholic Church, the current pope has made other statements that contradict Scripture in other ways. In December 2021, Pope Francis says sins of the flesh aren't that serious. In September 2017, he signaled support for legal recognition of same-sex civil unions. In October 2014, he said that evolution was not inconsistent with the belief of God. In September 2013, Pope Francis assured atheists that they don't have to believe in God to be saved, and that right there is totally wrong. Watch for the Vatican to take a more prominent role in world affairs, especially in Europe. The Pope is already involved in trying to mediate a truce between Russia and Ukraine. The Bible describes this religion as a great city that reigns over the kings of the earth. And that's in Revelation 17:18. The Roman Church has historically involved itself in Europe's political affairs and will increasingly try to do that more in the coming years. In addition to that, the religious power and other religious figures will gain greater prominence and influence by performing miracles that appear to be from God but are actually from Satan. That's Matthew 24 and Thessalonians 2:9. The horsemen that will end the four horsemen. If left unchecked, all these forces could lead to humanity's destruction. But God will not allow that to happen. He will send Jesus back to this earth to save us from ourselves. The return of the Son of God, who is depicted as the horseman with a sword on the real white horse, Revelations 9:11 through 21, will end the rides of the four horsemen of war, famine, pestilence, and false religion. Until then, Jesus admonishes his disciples to watch, therefore, and pray that you may be counted worthy to escape all things that will come to pass and stand before the Son of Man. And that's Luke 21 through 36. And that's the end of this article. Again, I will put a link to it in the description box below. Now, Revelations and Bible prophecy, that is one thing. If you ask 10 people the meanings of things, you're going to get 10 different answers. And there's a lot of debate on it and a lot of different opinions. What I just read, I agree with some of it. Some of it, I may or may not agree with. But I really would like to do a Bible study of the book of Revelation on here. If you're interested, it would help me learn as well, because I am by no means a Bible scholar at all. I'm probably the furthest thing from it. I am a Christian, and I do believe in the Lord Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, but as far as getting into the Bible, I'm not there by any means. So if you want to learn with me, let me know in the comments below. This is all I have for now. Y'all have a great day.